beautiful people, what is up and welcome back to my channel. I'm Dreamland. I love all things beauty, I love all things makeup, I love all things skincare, and I especially love sharing my tips and tricks for how to find high-end and luxury beauty products at bargain prices. If that sounds like something you're interested in, I would absolutely love if you would consider subscribing and joining the fam. Okay, so we're getting very festive over here, and I meant to take this off because I had this in my last video, but I don't know, I like it, so no, she gonna stay. Okay, so we're gonna keep it on for this video. But as you already saw, we're gonna be doing the 2022 eyeshadow palette tag. Now, this I saw from Annette's Makeup Corner. I know that she came up with the questions. I'm sure none of these questions are new or super revolutionary. Like, there's so many eyeshadow palette tags floating around, and you can honestly just pick and choose the questions that you want from each one and create your own tag or create your own list of questions. So there's, you know, this isn't something that's extremely unique. But I decided to sort of do the exact same questions that Annette did in hers. These are the ones that she pulled together. This is her list. So this was a completely 100% inspired by her video. Eyeshadow is one of my favorite parts of my makeup routine. It's like just something that I absolutely love doing. So I always love going back and reflecting on the different eyeshadow palettes I have in my collection. And now that we're coming to the end of 2022, I have been thinking just sort of about thinking more about all of the eyeshadow that I tried in 2022 and where I'm at. So there will be a couple more tags. There may be an eyeshadow palette award show at the end of the year as I really think about all of the palettes that I've tried this year. But right now we're going to kick it off with the 2022 eyeshadow palette tag by Annette. So let's just dive in. I may scooch over a little bit to insert some pictures and let's just chat. These are all my opinions, so please don't get mad at me. This is just how I feel right now in this moment. Y'all already know how it goes. Things could change, but that's the tea for right now. So the first question is, what is the most innovative release of the year? This one I felt was like a little bit hard because honestly, I can't remember anything from like the past like the last 3 months. And I think that speaks volumes. One of the things that I think we've noticed more with makeup and eyeshadow in particular is that it's become less and less innovative because everything has pretty much been done before. Like, everything has been done before. Like, nothing feels new, nothing feels fresh. It just all kind of feels recycled. Like, at first it was like, ooh, duochromes, multichromes. But now those are a dime a dozen, so it doesn't feel as exciting. But as I was thinking about it, the one thing that stood out to me as a really exciting release was the Ace Beauty Palettopoly palette. And not necessarily because the color story was innovative or the formula was innovative, but just sort of their marketing and the way in which they put out that release. I thought that was really exciting. And I'll insert a picture here for you guys to see that they decided that they were going to release this palette as a game. And it literally came with like pencils and a little notepad and instructions, like an actual board game typically comes with, in terms of how to play this game with the intent of making makeup fun again. Like, the goal was that you follow the game tells you exactly what shadows that you have to use, and then you put it on your eyes, which I thought was such a unique and innovative way of putting out a palette because, you know, makeup can sometimes follow a very almost rigid formula where it's like, okay, crease shade, transition shade, deepening up shade, outer V shade, and then a lid shade. Like, it can be very, very strict, and then, you know, sometimes there are these unspoken rules that aren't really rules, so don't listen to them. But things like, you can't use shimmers as a transition, or you shouldn't do this, or you shouldn't do that. And this game took all of that and was like, screw it. We're just gonna, like, play the game, and whatever the shade tells you to do it. So you could probably end up with a light shade as an outer corner shade, which is not typical. You could end up with a shimmer as a transition shade. Like, all of those things, like, I just thought that that was a really kind of like fun way of playing in makeup because I myself can a lot of times get into a rut. Like, I have a very comfortable way of doing makeup. I like a transition shade, something slightly deeper in the inner part, and then a outer corner deepening shade, and then I'll go in with two shimmer shades on the lid. That is like my comfort zone. So having something that tells me what to do so I don't have to think about it, it gives me like a very new way of trying makeup that I probably wouldn't have thought of before. So I was very excited by that. I did buy the palette. I did get the game. I haven't played the game yet, but I have used the palette and it's a nice palette. But I got the palette so that I could get the game. And I haven't played the game yet, but I thought that it was just such an innovative way in releasing makeup. And if you haven't tried it, and you want a new eyeshadow palette, don't just buy it for the game. But if you like really like the color story, I would definitely say you could consider picking up the palette because it's cool. Yeah, just my thoughts on like the most innovative release. Palette that surprised you the most. Honestly, I'm gonna have to give it to my Adept Cosmetics House of L palette. Here's the thing, I don't like the mattes in this palette. I absolutely do not like the mattes in this palette, but these shimmers, stunning. There is something so special about the shimmer formula in this palette that I keep coming back to it. This Zorel shade is like magic on the eyes. I've worn it so many different times. I've worn it to some really important occasions this year as well. Like, I took this palette with me to my cousin's bachelorette weekend because I needed a little bit of extra sparkle. I wore this to Kes, who is like one of my favorite artists of all time. I wore it to his concert. Absolutely loved it. I wore this to brunch with my friend. I bought a backup of this palette. That's how much this like surprised me. I don't believe in buying backups of eyeshadow palettes, but because this is a limited edition release, I bought a backup of this palette. And I bought a backup of this palette knowing that 3 out of the 9 shades are mattes that I don't like. Makes no sense, right? But those shimmers are so damn good that I was willing to buy a £9 palette knowing that I'm only going to use 6 shades. And I already have those 6 shades because I have the palette already. And it was so surprising to me because when I bought this palette and I tried it and I did my first impressions on it, like you'll see in the first impressions video, I failed the first time I put it on my eyes and I had to redo the look because the first look was so bad. And the funny thing about it was that I expected that I was just not going to reach for this palette after that video. And since that video, I just consistently reach for this palette when I want some extra sparkle, when I want some extra glam, when I just want to do more. And, you know, it makes me feel really confident and fiery and all of that. Plus, I love Superman. So, like, it just surprised me so much that I keep reaching for this palette, knowing that 3 of the mattes don't work. And, like, yeah. Really surprised me, blew me away, and I know I'm going to keep reaching for this in 2023. The next question is, what is a palette that you regret buying? And I have to give it to the Clionadh Dragon Fruit palette. Now, this has nothing to do with Emily Violet Marie. I don't know who that is. I don't watch their content. I know that this is a collab palette. So this has nothing to do with her. I just didn't like the palette. Like, after doing my review of this, I've reached for this once for 1 shade and that was it. I don't reach for this palette. I keep forgetting that I have this palette. This is not a good representation of Clionadh as I understand it. I feel like instead of me spending money on this palette, I should have just bought the shades that I wanted from the brand. So like looking at this now, it feels like such a waste because I don't use it, and I really, really wanted to try Clionadh, and I don't think that this was a good introduction into the brand for me. And it would have been more worth my while to spend the money on the shades that I knew I wanted than to buy a palette thinking I was going to get a good feel for the brand when it turned out to be just a pretty pink palette with shades that I don't want. So yeah, I'm actually really sad that I bought this. It might be one that honestly, this might be one that I declutter very soon because it's not one that I am inspired to reach for or think about at all. Okay, the next question is best collaboration. I struggle with this one, and I kind of want to cheat a little bit on this one. Just a little bit. A lot of it, actually. But you know what? This is my channel. I go in and do what I want. So instead of telling you guys the best collaboration, I actually have like 3 in mind. So we're going to talk about all 3. So the first thing that I want to talk about is actually what I'm wearing on my eyes, and that is the Sydney Grace and Mel Thompson collab. This is the bundle that Mel Thompson pulled together, inspired by Retro Glam. And this was when, you know, Natasha Denona released her retro palette, and everybody was like, wait, what? And Mel put together this bundle using her Sydney Grace shadows. And Sydney Grace decided to release this entire bundle as an option for folks that wanted to pick it up. I tried it today for the first time. I think it's absolutely stunning, absolutely beautiful. I think that this has to be like, it made me think of best collab because like Mel really put a lot of thought into this palette, and she created a palette that could work for everybody. Like there are some lighter shades for people of lighter complexions, but she made sure that there was enough depth so that people like myself would have shades to deepen things up and it wouldn't look as as ashy or pastel, which is one of the issues that I have with the Natasha Denona Retro Glam palette. And I'm saying issues pretty broadly. Like the palette doesn't work for me, and that's fine. It's, I'm not mad about it. But I like the fact that I can get a very similar look, very similar vibe using the Sydney Grace shadows. And yeah, I think it's just one of the best collabs out there of 2022 because it's a very universal palette or group of shadows slash palette that could work for everybody. The other one that I want to talk about is the second version of the Shroud Cosmetics collab with Batty Bean. This is such a nice palette. The Shroud Cosmetics formula is amazing. They feel like butter, and I don't even know how to explain it, but just blending it feels different. And when you've blended enough shadows, you know those very subtle differences that are hard to describe using words, but you feel it as you're blending it and your brush is, doing, like, I don't know. You get what I'm saying. But I love this palette, and I think that I want to talk about it as best collab just for this shade. This shade is so beautiful. It's so grungy. It's so gorgeous. And even this green orange shade here, which very, very weak multi-chrome, but still really, really beautiful. Y'all know I love orange, and this is just such a unique shade that I don't have anything like it in my collection, that these two shades together, superb. So I really enjoyed this palette more than I was expecting to. One of these shades just, Crypt just wasn't giving what I needed it to give, but the two multi-chromes, and I'm using that term very loosely, they saved that palette, and it does make it a very, very strong collab for 2022. And then lastly, I want to talk about the collab Sydney Grace with Tina, aka the Fancy Face. I think that's such a beautiful collab. I think Tina is just so good at eyeshadow. She's just so good at pulling things together. Like, she did an amazing job with Odin's Eye with her collab. She did an equally amazing job with her collab with Sydney Grace. I don't know where it is. I can't find it, so I'll insert a picture and I will link my review in case you guys want to check that out. But what I love about that palette is that she was very thoughtful about making sure that she included options for people that like to stay neutral, but then she also gave us a lot of different colorful options. And I think that there's just a different level of versatility in that palette that allows you to be neutral, colorful, in between, that I really appreciated. And it was inspired by the Caribbean. There's just so many things that resonate with me as somebody from the Caribbean. Yes, it's inspired by her home country, Jamaica. But Jamaica, Trinidad, Grenada, Dominica, Haiti, we all share the same sea. So there are a lot of things that are transferable across the islands. So it definitely resonated very, very well with me. And I think that was just an amazing collab palette. And Tina did a fabulous job. And honestly, that blue look that I did, chef's kiss. And yes, I'm giving myself all of the props. Okay, so the next question is worst collaboration. I can't think of an individual that had a really bad collab. Because the thing that I find is that when brands collab with creators specifically, the products tend to be really well done because creators kind of know what they want. They have really good vision. They're able to pull things together really nicely. So I'm not going to talk about a specific creator, but I'm going to talk about like a franchise. And the Colourpop and Avatar franchise really broke my heart. I love Avatar. It is one of my favorite series. I've rewatched it so many times. If you've watched a couple of my videos, you probably would have seen my Avatar mug in the videos because I've had that for some months now and I love drinking out of it. It's this blue mug and it has like these little baby, almost like baby versions of Aang and Katara and Sokka and Appa, and I think it's really cute. I also have this Avatar little notebook that has little inserts for all of the characters. I really like Avatar. So when I saw that Colourpop was going to come up with an Avatar collection, I know that I don't like the Colourpop formula, but I was willing to put that aside to pick up the collection because I like the Avatar franchise. And then I saw the collection and I was like, really? We were rooting for you. We were all rooting for you. And it was so bad that I couldn't even bring myself to buy it off of the sheer strength of Avatar alone. Like, it would have been such a waste for me to buy it because the best thing about that collection was the packaging. So I was really disappointed. I didn't end up buying anything. Even when it went on sale, I was just like, I just can't. So yeah, that really irritated me that they took a franchise that I loved and they made it that bad. Even their Harry Potter collection was nicer. And I love Harry Potter too. Like the books, absolutely love Harry Potter. I have like a full collection of the books in my on my bookshelf. And even that palette was like much nicer, but that Avatar palette, I was like, no. It was such a disappointing release. Anyway, best seasonal release, I think I'm gonna have to give that to the Gourmand Girls Spooked palette. This one was sent to me in PR by the brand, and I really enjoyed this palette. Now, this came out during the Halloween time, and here's the thing with Halloween. Everybody had a Halloween palette, and everybody had the same orange, purple, green color story. It was not unique. It was very much rinse and repeat. You honestly just needed to pick the formula that you liked the best and you would have gotten the same palette because everybody had the same color story. It really just kind of came down to formula. But I felt like the Gourmand Girls did it very differently and in a way that I really appreciated, because in addition to the purple, green, orange color story, they gave us neutrals in this palette in a way that I did not expect. Like, I didn't think that I could get like a really everyday neutral look from this palette, but I did. And that's what I loved. This shade here is such a unique shade. I think this is what I wanted Crypt in the Halloween palette to be, and it wasn't. And I loved this shade. And they did a really good job of giving us a black and a white so that we could deepen up and change some of these matte shades the way we needed it to be. This green copper multi-chrome was perfection, and it helped give me a really nice neutral look in a way that I 100% like appreciated. And the mattes in the Gourmand Girls palette was just so good. I have no other palettes from them. I have no other way to tell if these are the same mattes across the board. But the ones here are superb. They were such good mattes, and I think that the addition of this red was just really nice and surprising, because I felt like all the palettes that I had were purple, orange, and green, and we got this really nice red in here. They also threw in a pink, and the thing about it is that when you look at this palette and you stop and you think about it, there are so many colors in here, but they all fit together in a way that's not chaotic. So you get green, both in terms of this shadow as well as this kind of green leaning matte, and then this shade here is a green pink multi-chrome, and then you get neutral shades where you have this kind of green brown copper shade, but it looks very nice and neutral with a little oomph on the eye. Then you have this orange and this brown that are very much they can give you a very nice neutral shade. So you can create a look with these three shades that kind of is very neutral, and then if you still need some depth, this black allows you to deepen up the brown to make it nice and smoky. Then you have this shade here, which is also like a very kind of somewhat standard, almost rose gold shade, which again, with these three shades and the black, you can keep it very neutral. So you have the neutral options. Then you have the purple, standard, you know, very bright purple, but also a kind of like purple maroon shade to give it a little bit of depth. Then you have a purple shimmer, and then you have a pink shimmer, as well as a red matte. So you have a purple, pink, brown, neutral, orange, green, white, black. And saying all of that out loud, it sounds chaotic, but on the eyes, all of these shades work well together, and I felt like of the Halloween palettes, this just gave me more versatility than the others, because those I felt like very limited by what I could do, and this I felt very inspired and that I could do multiple different looks that were very distinctly different because there were so many different colors in there, and it wasn't chaotic, it was very cohesive. Okay, next question, palette still on your mind, and this one was an easy one for me because it is the Fantasy Cosmetics Druid palette. This I did purchase myself. I do have the two other palettes which I was gifted to by the brand, but this one I bought myself, and this one is perfection. Again, this is what I was hoping that Crypt shade in Halloween would be, but wasn't. And this is such a beautiful palette. The biggest thing here is the fact that these two mattes are honestly almost identical, and I wish that one of them was lighter. But other than that, all of these shades in here are superb. All of these are special. All of these are shades that I I'm always thinking about, and I think that even though this is more grungy, it is a very nice year-round palette. It is one that I think works perfectly for the fall. It's like the perfect fall palette, but also one that I feel comfortable wearing in the spring. It came out in the spring. I think it came out in March. And I remember creating looks with it and I was like, whoa, hold up now. Okay. And it is one that I still think about all the time and want to reach for all the time. If I didn't have like such a huge basket of shame, if you haven't seen that video, it'll be linked below. If I didn't have such a huge basket of shame, I would constantly be reaching for this palette. Okay, 3 more questions left. Next question is, what are you hoping to see next year? For me next year, I think I'm really hoping to see all of the brands that popped up this year really do more. I think one of the things that we've all kind of realized over this last year and the year before is that a lot of these small indie brands are using private labeled shadows, private labeled products, which isn't bad by itself. It's definitely not a bad thing. But with multiple brands purchasing from the same sellers, you end up with the same shade multiple times, the same formula multiple times, and that is, for us as consumers, a waste. Like, I don't need the same multi-chrome or dual-chrome shade in 5 different palettes because I bought it from 5 different indie brands. And I know that a lot of indie brands use this as a way to get started and to, you know, build their business, get that recognition, and then when they finally have the capital or the funds, they can go and start tweaking formulas and getting the specific formulas that they like. So I'm really hoping that we see less new indie brands popping up with the same formula and more brands, you know, now that they have some of the resources because they're pretty established, creating their own formula, creating something that's a little bit more special and a little bit more unique. What don't you want to see more of next year? Well, I don't want to see any monochromatic palettes. I think the whole, like, here's a 9-pan green eyeshadow palette or a 9-pan pink eyeshadow palette, I think I'm just over the full monochromatic palette piece. I would like to see less gimmicks, but, you know, that's just kind of like what the game is now. But yeah, monochromatic palettes are the things that stand out to me the most. And then there's also like the collabs that don't make sense, or just over collabing with like Barbie and Disney and all of these franchises that they don't do justice. I think that's what it comes down to, is that they collab with these franchises and they just kind of slap some colors together and it's like, here, and they don't do it justice. Like, and that I think is annoying. So hopefully we get less of that and, you know, just less. And then the last question is, what are your personal goals to improve on next year? Honestly, I just want less. Like, I don't want to be bringing in as much palettes as I did this year. I really bought a shit ton of palettes. In addition to, you know, getting what I got from PR that I don't really have, like, a lot of issues with because I love getting palettes so that I can be able to review them for you all. But I brought in a lot of palettes that I had intentions of reviewing, never got a chance to review, and then it's just sitting there. You know, I have no intentions of buying palettes simply for the sake of reviewing them. I don't have the budget to do that. I do not want to be a review channel, and I just want to be more thoughtful about all of the products that I'm bringing in, because then I have palettes like the Druid palette that is on my mind constantly and I want to use it, but I don't have the time to use it because I have this growing basket of shame that I want to get through. So I just want to be more thoughtful, more intentional with the products that I bring in. For context, we are in December and I have decided that I'm going to do a December no buy, so no makeup in December. I will purchase skincare as needed. For example, I used my Sephora gifting coupon to buy the faded cream, which my dermatologist recommends that I use to help with my evening out my skin tone, helping with my hypopigmentation. So I did buy that, and I'm gonna buy the Refa moisturizer, the thick one, because I've been experiencing a lot more dry patches and it's still pretty early in winter, so it's only gonna get worse from here. So I want to try a thicker cream to help with that. So skincare, I will do some of that. I don't need no more makeup right now, especially not in December. So December, I'm on a full no buy. And then starting January, I'm really going to be on a very strict budget. I have a lot of expenses in 2023, like a lot of expenses in 2023. And just financially, I won't be able to bring in as much as I did this year, which is great because I really want to use what I have. And honestly, it would probably take me a couple of months to go through my basket of shame anyway, so I still have a lot to go through. And I'm not a review channel, so I shouldn't be consuming that much palettes, you know? So that is my goal for 2023. Obviously, I want to refine that a little bit more and think it through a little bit more and, you know, come up with something, which I'll probably talk about in like a January goals 2023 video. So we'll see. But that is it. That is the 2022 eyeshadow makeup tag by Annette. This was a lot of fun to do. I love doing tags because I just like talking and sharing my thoughts. But it is pretty late. I have been filming for forever. It's going on like 3 hours right now. I haven't eaten anything yet, and it's almost it's 2 o'clock. I haven't eaten anything all day. I'm hungry, bordering on hangry. So that is gonna be it for me for this video. If you like this video, go ahead and hit that like button. If you want to, I would love if you would consider, you know, leaving your answers to the questions down below. If you have your own channel, you can do it on your channel. Make sure you tag Annette. You know, the whole deal. If you haven't already done so, subscribe. I think the button's here. Or it might be here. If you haven't already done so, subscribe. I would love to have you join the family. I have a ton of content coming for you guys. I'm doing my best to make sure that I am keeping things moving. As always, thank you guys so much for the support, and I will catch you in my next one. Bye!